Now, welcome back to the topic. That is, yesterday we were discussing about the patents. Now, uh, the next slide is on the rights of the patent owner. So, when you ask the question, what rights does a patent owner have? Then, as I mentioned earlier, the patent actually it's or any intellectual property, any form of intellectual property, it is a bundle of rights that is given to the inventor. So a patent gives the owner of the patent the rights, like the patent owner wishes to recover his expense. That is the basic concept, because for every invention there might have its some expense. For example, a pharmaceutical company may spend already millions or billions of dollars for the research and development or R&D part of that discovery. So they want to recover the expense, and which will contribute to their further growth and development in the research field. A patent owner has the exclusive right to decide who may or may not use the patented invention for a period in which the invention is protected. Usually, as we know, it is a period of 20 years. So, the patent owner has the exclusive right to decide who may or may not use that technology or invention or that idea for the protection period of 20 years. And he retains his right for the term of the patent, that is the 20 years, if he pays the necessary renewal fees or maintenance fees. So that is compulsory. So that doesn't mean that once you got a patent, it gives you unlimited protection for the entire period of 20 years. There should be an annual fee that is paid by the patent owner for or a patent renewal or maintenance fee, and that should be given to the government for the maintenance of the patent, and it's an annual fee that is given for the maintenance to the government. So the protection of 20 years for the patent is available only if you give the renewal fee to the government and maintain the patent upgraded or updated. Then the patent owner may give the permission to or license other parties to use the invention on mutually agreed terms. And that is the necessary part of the invention or patent. Because if you got a patent and if you are not selling it or commercializing it, or if you are not applying that technology or new invention into some field, then uh, it will not be commercially useful, or it will not be available to the public in a useful form. So the patent owner need to decide who may or may not use the technology, and also he need to decide who can use that technology. So he need to give permission to that people who, or the companies or firms or technology developers, to use his technology in their products. So which means they have to give the permission and give a license to the third parties or some other companies for using their invention on a mutually agreed terms. So he can give permission to the to third parties or other parties for using the technology and giving him the revenue out of that. So the owner of the patent may also sell the right of the invention to someone else, just like any other property, like a physical property or a tangible property, like a car or a house or a property or a land, which we can sell. The intellectual property in the form of a patent can be sold to someone else. So once you once you sell that product or the patent, then the new owner who bought that one will be the exclusive owner of that patent. So the patent can be sold. So once just like any other property, patent can be sold to other persons with a price. So major inventions like the PCR technology or various technologies were actually invented, and later it is transferred to some other larger companies for commercialization. Usually, scientists who do research in various fields will get a patent initially, and if it is useful, the companies feel that it is useful. They may get the license and try to commercialize it. And if it is a very useful technology, then certainly the companies will try to procure that one, and they will try to make it their own. So the patent owner may sell that patent, just like any other property, to the companies who want to own them. So that's it. Then once the patent expires, the protection ends and the invention enters in the public domain. So once the protection ends means after the expiry of the 20-year period in which the protection is applicable, the patent expires and the technology or the idea or the innovation, whatever, that patent and the protection, the patented idea or the invention will come to the public domain and it becomes a public property. So then the patents are or the legal rights over the invention are usually limited by. So there are some legal limitations for the patent, just like the rights which is already granted, which is already mentioned. There are some limitations to that that patent or the rights which is given to the owner of the patent. These rights which is given through the patent were subject to the amendment or invalidation by the courts. Yesterday I mentioned that one. So if there is a case arises in the later stage after awarding the patent, then the courts may make that patent or the granted patent invalid based on some later claims by another person that it is not a novel one or it is they have some contribution in that one. So if there is a dispute in the court may make that patent invalid so that the rights which is given through the patent will no longer be available to the patent owner. Then where the invention is an improvement or development of an earlier patent, then the patent owner may need to obtain a license and pay royalties to the earlier patent owner. So in many cases, the patented technology may be an improvement or an adaptation from the existing one. And if you are commercializing the new invention, which is actually based on the previous invention, then you need to pay the license fee to the previous owner. So a share of the profit will be given to, or it should be transferred to the original owner whose invention or whose idea that you improved. Then the patent owner's rights are usually limited by the patent law, and the patent owner is required to work his invention either on his own behalf or by licensing it to others for use if he wishes to retain his monopoly, which means the requirement, when we discussed the requirements for the patent yesterday, we mentioned that the technology should be novel and also it should be useful it should be useful and there should be some commercial application. So if you got a patent and if you're not commercializing it and if you're not making the technology or that invention or that idea available for development and commercialization, then you may lose the rights over that one. You can't hold it without release. You have to license it to somebody else so that it can be, that patented technology can be utilized in some fields. And if you are not releasing it or licensing that, or if you are not giving permission for others to commercialize that one, then you have to use it and make that product available. And once the patent is granted, if you are not commercializing or licensing and you are holding it for yourself, and if you are not giving it to anybody, then the protection of the patent may be invalidated. So useful application of the technology is a necessary part in the award of the patent. The next one, A non-voluntary license may, for instance, be granted to third parties if it can be demonstrated that the patented invention is not worked or is insufficiently worked in the country. For example, I'm inventing a vaccine for coronavirus, and I'm not trying to commercialize it. I'm just sitting idle. That I am not. I will see that I am not giving any license to any third parties or pharmaceutical companies. Nobody else can produce it, and I am also not going to produce it. So in that case, it is underutilized in the country of grant, and that technology or the product is not made available to the public. So in that case, a non-voluntary license can be granted by the court or the government. So your exclusive right to prevent others will not be valid if you are not using that invention and you are making the product available by your own or through your licensees. So that's one of the aspects of non-voluntary licensing in case of a patent. So the patented invention may often be used by the government or the third parties authorized by the government where the public interest so requires on terms fixed by the agreement or by the courts. So these can be granted to the third parties or authorized by the government. For example, if you have a patent and you are not commercializing it, then the government may give license to, for example, some pharmaceutical companies for the production, and but because it is on public interest. In case of such pandemics or other things where such life-saving medicines are required, then if it is not available readily available in the market in a fair price, so the government can produce then the government can issue non-voluntary licenses to third parties or other pharmaceutical companies for producing that life-saving medicine or that product based on public interest. And this is a part of a non-voluntary licensing or a compulsory licensing by the government, which will supersede the exclusive rights of the patent owner. So when we come to the benefits of the patent, you can say that it safeguards the intellectual and artistic creations. Then it promotes the spread of use of novel ideas, because the commercialization or the useful or making the technology or invention useful is a necessary part of the patent or granting a patent. So that requirement of the patent, which makes it necessarily to be commercialized, that makes it that promotes the spread of technology or the progress of technology and the novel ideas. And also it encourages investment, because if you are getting or if you are making some invention and then you are getting the rewards out of that, or you are getting the financial outcome out of that one, then that promotes further investment in the field by the concerned company or who actually invests in that R&D or research and development segment. So it encourages investment further in the segment, because your previous investment was actually giving you some returns, which promotes the further investment in that sector. So it provides consumers large range of options for the products. So usually, since all these technologies were made available to the public in a useful form, or the technology is transferred and commercialized, it gives the consumers a large range of options for the products, patented products, and lead to all round economic development of the country. And because all these are market driven, all the patented products and this commercialization and transfer of this technology to make useful products, all these things were actually it is driven by the demand of the market. So you can say that it leads to all round economic development of the country and society in general. So there are some problems also. When we discuss the benefits of the patent, there are some problems also. The problems include it encourages monopolies. So if you got exclusive right over the production of something or some technology, then it encourages monopolies, and generally you can decide on who can use your technology and who cannot. So it encourages monopolies. And another issue is that there are enforcement problems in the technology, because if somebody infringes that one or somebody violates your rights, usually there was a time when uh, generally there is a talk like some products, patented products were produced in China, for example. Chinese products were actually low cost products compared to the other ones, and they usually adopt a similar technology which may be which may be granted protection in some other countries. But if they use the same technology without giving the royalty to the concerned inventor, they can even imitate the product, or a duplicate product can be made, which can be marketed also. But in that case, where the duplicates of the original one dominates, then it is having serious financial implications, and tracing that duplicates out of the market and enforcing the law over them, it's a quite difficult task. And you know there exist many forms of duplicate products. For example, if you have a mobile, if you require a mobile battery to be replaced, certainly there will be an original one, and at least 10 of different duplicate products will be available for the same model, and all will have the same sticker. So that's a part of infringement of the protection which is given to the product. So it is already available that such duplicate products where copyright or patent or technology or protection or the patent protection or IPR protection is violated. Now, it is considered as a threat to food security. When we come to the protection, especially not in terms of patent, but plant varieties and other things, in such cases of IPR protection, it can be considered as a threat to the food safety. For example, if a good yielding variety is protected and if it is not made available to another country, then it limits the food production or the productivity in the food sector of that country. And there are various technologies nowadays, even GM crop technology or patented technology, terminated seed technology. There are various technologies out there which may be patented. So it can be considered as a threat to the food security because without that protection or the limitation or exclusive rights which is granted in that sector, maybe a better amount of food can be produced compared to the other ones. Better production in the food sector can be, or better yield in the food sector can be achieved. Then adverse effect on biodiversity and environment. Certain inventions or certain products may have adverse effect on biodiversity and environment. Especially it is there are some dispute which is going on in the case of genetically modified organisms and GM crops. There are some countries will not permit the usage of many GM crops, but in case of US and other things, they are actually widely using these GM crops, and most of the GM crops were actually based on patented technologies with some terminated seeds and various insecticide genes which is inserted in the plant or other things. So there are a lot of technologies, patented technologies, which is used in that agricultural sector, especially in the case of GM crops and similar areas. So even genetically modified organisms may have some adverse, it may adversely affect the biodiversity and environment. That is another issue. Then it can adversely affect developing countries, because the developing countries, especially our technology or the pace of technology development in the case of developing countries, even in India, is much less. When we consider the overall quantity of the patent which is granted worldwide, US and US may dominate, and many foreign countries or European countries will dominate the patent sector. Maybe only a very low percentage of patents, even, and that patents may not be useful and it will not have any commercial implication. That means usually US and such developed countries will hire the scientists from various fields all over the world, and they develop the technology. They get the protection of the patent, and they market, they commercialize that technology for their own benefits. So overall, in the patent regime, most of the, or more than 90 or 95 percentage of the patents were actually obtained, and it is and that is a that technology is translated into some useful products by through technology transfer by such developed countries only. And when we come to the developing countries, their contribution in the patent sector and the commercialization and the economic gain out of that patent in the case of such a developing countries will be much less. So we can say that in most of the times the developed countries may get an advantage over the developing countries and underdeveloped countries in terms of the protection. So all the protection is, and the financial benefits will be driven to the developed countries and not to the developing or underdeveloped countries. So these are some facts in India in which evergreening of the patent is not allowed. So evergreening means if you develop a patent, or if you have one invention, and just by modifying with a slight modification, if you are trying to extend the protection period for another 20 years, then that is not allowed. For example, there is already existing technology, and usually that patent should expire after 20 years. And after some time, if you come up with a slight modification of the existing technology and say that it's a new invention, and then you want another protection for the same technology for another 20 years. So that's a method of evergreening of the patent, or you are trying to extend the overall term of the coverage of the protection, which is not allowed. So if it is not an entirely new technology with that much implication, then such type of extension is not allowed. So it allows compulsory licensing, as I mentioned, especially for the medicines and life-saving technologies. Then, if it is not properly available or commercialized and made available with in a fair price in India, then there is a provision for compulsory licensing, especially in the pharmaceutical sector, so that that decision can be made by the government and while considering the public demand. It allows both product and process patents. And yesterday, when we discussed the patents, I said that the invention, it may be an idea, or the product which is developed through the idea, or the process for the development of a product can also, a novel process can also be patented. So in India, we can have product and process patents. So the same product can be produced through different processes, as I mentioned. And that means if you are developing a new process which significantly reduces the overall production cost and even the production time, then that will become a novel invention, and it will have its own economic impacts. So that means the process can also be patented. So there's a system of pre-grant and post-grant oppositions. Rather, if a technology, if you are claiming the ownership of a technology or an invention, then there is a provision for you have to file. We will come to the details of patent application procedure later. So there is a strict scrutiny of your application, whether it is already they will review the literature, and whether such a they will verify whether it is an existing one or not, it is having some claim or not by some other parties. And even after the grant of the patent, if somebody come up with a challenge that it is their contribution, is their technology that you actually uh, uh, you made in your own name, then there is a system of challenging after the post grant stage. So there is a data exclusivity for a unfair commercial use of the application. So data exclusivity means in some cases, as we discussed earlier, usually the patented invention should be disclosed. Means everything, every minute detail of your invention should be disclosed so that another person, a moderately skilled person, can reproduce the same result using the details that is provided, so that even he can work on that and improve the existing technology. So that's the idea of a full disclosure. But in some cases, uh, the companies maintain data exclusivity. And data exclusivity is actually, it prevents unfair commercial use. Data exclusivity means, for example, um, you may have some new drug which is invented and marketed. For example, Pfizer company, they developed a new drug, and that invention is actually during that invention or the commercialization or when or the development of the drug, there are various stages. First of all, there should be identification of the potential candidate drug, and there are various phases in the clinical trials. And the main component of the approval of the drug is the stages in the clinical trial. There should be in vitro and animal experimentation, animal trials, then human trials. All these things should be there. And only after that it is commercialized. So the data of the animal trials and human trials may not be released to the public. They may hold the data exclusively, because if it is released outside, it may have some other effects or unfair commercial use by another companies by the same data is a problem. So usually such companies will hold the data, but they release the technology and the ideas, but especially the patient-related data and say the clinical trial data, all these things. Actually, it is a part of the original work based on which they develop the drug. But that clinical data and other things, which is an exclusive data of the concerned company, they may not release that one for use or commercial exploitation by another company. So such type of data exclusivity is available in India, and it is for preventing the unfair commercial use of such a data. So that provision is also available in India, data exclusivity. Then enforcement of the and infringement, which means every protection, every patented invention or every form of IPR that needs to be enforced, or others will use it. So if you have the rights, if you have a property, you have to keep it as your own, and you have to prevent and take every measures which is possible to prevent others from unfairly using it. So that is a part of the enforcement, and there should be legal measures for enforcing that that patented invention. So an infringement, enforcing a patent rests exclusively with the patent owner. So if you want to prevent others, you have to prevent others from using that one, and you have to adopt all the legal measures to prevent that one. Or use for the enforcement of that rights, you have to adopt all the legal measures if somebody infringes or violates that rights. In infringement of an infringement of the exclusive rights of a patent owner involves the unauthorized exploitation of a patent invention by a third party. So in practice, a polite letter pointing out the existence of the patent, carrying the implication that patentee will sue, carries the implication that the patentee will sue if the infringement continues. So usually what we do is that there are cases in which the infringer or the person who actually violates the IPR protection may not be aware of the patent which is existing. So if somebody unwillingly or unknowingly, if somebody uses a technology and some product is produced and marketed, then the patent owner usually they will send a legal notice that there is the existence of a patent and he is the owner of the patent, and without his permission you can't use it. So he can politely send a letter, and that letter or a legal notice to the infringer will give an indication that if you continue the infringement, you will sue him in the court, and that is possible. Usually, that is the first step. And if he continues persistent infringement, in that case, you can offer him a license. Okay, if you still want to use my technology, the patent owner will offer him a license for a price. And if he is again not coming into the terms of the agreement of the license, then the option is going for a court and sue them. And there are various cases in the court worldwide, even between various companies, for example, Apple company and various other mobile companies, or with different pharmaceutical companies. There are already existing a lot of cases for most of the multinational firms have their own cases, a number of cases against each other for a violation of the patents. Because especially for the mobile companies and car companies, everything, wherever you take, there are cases against each other for violation of the patents. And the court will settle after looking into the merit of the case. So the next one is trademark. Trademark, it is actually protected by the Trademark Act in 1999 in India. It is maintained by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, trademark is typically it's a name, a word, or a phrase, or a logo, a symbol, or a sign, image, or a combination of these elements. So usually, trademarks, which is marked as a capital R in a ring, circle R vechitana registered logo undavu. So it can be, for example, Microsoft, the name is a trademark. Apple, the name is a trademark. And they have their own logos also. Microsoft, for example, that particular logo of the Microsoft is there. So for every company or every multinational company have their own brand names, and maybe they have their own logos or symbols or designs. For example, Mercedes-Benz, they have their own design, and Audi, they have their own design, or their logo is there. So all these trademarks of the particular company, the name or the name, maybe a phrase or a logo or a symbol or a design or an image which indicates the particular company, and that image, for example, the icon or the logo of the Benz, it is having its own reputation. So such trademarks comes with the reputation of the company. And there is also a range of non-conventional trademarks comprising marks which do not fall in the standard categories, such as those based in color, smell, or sound. So a trademark cannot be offensive. Offensive trademarks allowed alla, but there are different types of trademarks available. India joins this Madrid Protocol in 2013, and the Madrid system for international registration of marks offers trademark owners a cost-effective, user-friendly, and streamlined means for protecting and managing their trademark portfolio internationally. So, in 2013, there is an international agreement or a treaty, Madrid Protocol, in which India became a party, and that gives the trademark, or it made an international registration provision for the trademarks worldwide, and it provides a cost-effective and user-friendly means for protecting your brand, your logo, or your brand name worldwide or internationally. So this protection is actually given as a part of the 2013 joining of a Madrid Protocol in India. Then the next one is design. The design is actually protected by Designs Act of 2000 in India. And again, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry is the ministry that maintains that design protection. Apple iPhones are manufactured in China, but China is able to capture 2 to 5% of its value, while overwhelming part is cornered by USA. So only 2 to 5% of the iPhones were actually made in China. But still, China manufactures iPhones because there are the cheaply available resources and labor in China. Most of the companies will, they started their own units in China. And iPhone, as we know, it's already manufactured in China. If you look into your phone, even the previous Nokia or international versions, or even at the back of your laptop also, made in China will be there. So most of the international companies, even Apple, have their own units in China. But when we consider the Apple iPhone, only 2 to 5% is actually made in China, whereas the rest, or all remaining part, or more than 90% is made in USA. This is mainly attributed to the value added by the design and research, which is based on USA. Thus, importance of design protection can be overstressed. So, the design of the iPhone, actually, all these things were done by USA, and even when we purchase a phone, previously when we purchase a phone, we will see whether it is made in China or USA or Germany, or wherever the unit of or the made in location of the particular device. Usually, that also is having some significant impact on the market. So usually, if you have two products with Germany or USA and China, then there's a tendency that you will prefer the USA version of the mobile over the China version, because there is a concept that, or there's an idea that the version of the mobile that is produced in China with cheap labor cost and cheap resources will not have that much quality when we compare it with the other international products. So anyway, iPhones is an example in which this is manufactured worldwide, but USA holds, or US fraction holds most of the share of the iPhones, because all the design and development of the iPhone is actually done in USA itself, and only a small portion of that technology is actually transferred in the later stage to the Chinese units. And as per WIPO, or World Intellectual Property Organization, in a legal sense, an industrial design constitutes the ornamental or aesthetic aspect of the article. So, a design, the design of the iPhone or a mobile or a car, so whatever, and it is the ornamental and aesthetic aspect of a product or an article. Article means a product for anything. It may be a car, or it may be a mobile, or or a laptop. So the aesthetic component, or what adds beauty to that product, is the design part. And even it's important in terms of the technological invention part, because nowadays better and better designs of the mobile were there, so that the screen, for example, in the case of a mobile, we have previously 3.5-inch screen was there. Now it is almost 7-inch screens or 6.6-inch screens there. Or the entire screen without any further buttons, all the buttons were removed, and the entire screen area is now converted into touch screen. so that the visibility is actually now increased to about 6.6. Previously, it was not there. So it's a better design. So the companies were coming up with better and better designs so that its market value is actually added. So the ornamental and aesthetic aspect of an article or a product is a design component. An industrial design may consist of three dimensional features, such as the shape of an article or two-dimensional features such as patterns, lines, or colors. So ഇതൊക്കെ അതിനകത്ത് വരുന്നുണ്ട്. So an industrial design may consist of the shape and size of the article or the product, or two-dimensional features such as the various drawings or lines or color of the product. All these things were part of the designs. So the next one is Geographical Indication Act of 1999. So geographical indications of goods are defined as that aspect of the industrial property which refers to the geographical indication referring to a country or a place situated therein as being the country or place of origin of that product. So which means the geographical indications means the product is actually linked to a particular location of or a particular country or a particular location or a particular geographical location. So the quality, typically the name conveys an assurance of the quality and distinctiveness, which is essentially attributable to the fact of its origin in that defined geographical locality, region, or country, which means the quality of the product is actually linked with the locality of the locality in which it is made. For example, Kanchipuram silk. The name is associated with the Kanchipuram. Maybe somebody else can try to produce the same silk at Tanjavur or Delhi or Mumbai, wherever it can be produced. But Kanchipuram silk is the silk that is actually made in Kanchipuram. So the quality of another silk which is produced in Calcutta or Chennai or wherever, it cannot be labeled as Kanchipuram silk because the Kanchipuram silk is actually it's a geographical indication, or it is protected by its geographical indication. Only the product which is manufactured at that particular geographical location is given that right for labeling as a Kanchipuram silk. So you can't produce a Kanchipuram silk from Kerala. So that means it is the name of the Kanchipuram silk is actually linked with the yes. The name is actually linked with the quality of the product and that particular geographical location. Under the Article 1, 2 and 10 of the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property in 1979, geographical indications are covered as an element of IPRs, and which means that is the convention. Paris Convention geographical indication protection കൊടുത്തത് 1979. Then geographical indications are covered as an element of the IPR in 1979, and they are also covered under the Article 22 and 24 of the trade-related aspects of industrial property rights. That is a TRIPS agreement in 1994. So TRIPS 1994 under Article 22 and 24 also gives a protection for geographical indications. India, as a member of the World Trade Organization, enacted the Geographical Indications of Goods Registration and Protection Act in 1999, or GI Act in 1999, has come up into effect in 15th September 2003. India in 1999 undaki, but that was enforced in the country on 15th September 2030. And from that point onwards, we have geographical indications, or the protection into geographical indications is available. So that is some examples like Kanchipuram silk, Aramula Kannadi. The example at Varayavana. Vechur Pashu. These are all different forms of geographical indications which you can't take away from that particular locality. അതിനെടുത്ത് മറ്റൊരാൾക്ക് ഇതിന് പ്രൊട്ടക്ഷൻ ഉണ്ട് എന്ന് പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല. So the quality of that particular article or the product is linked with the geographical location. So in that case, it is protected by or the that article or the product which is which is well known with its place of origin is actually protected by Geographical Indications Act of 1999 in India. The next one is the protection of plant varieties and Farmers' Rights Act in 2001. So India is obliged or bind under under TRIPS agreement to adopt UPO Act of 1991. The UPO Act was actually it is a union for protection of plant varieties. UPO Act of 2091 of the, it's an international treaty, it's an international agreement, and that was adopted by TRIPS agreement by India. TRIPS, that is in 1994, on TRIPS India vannathu. And that 1991 UPO Act was India made a party of that 1991 UPO Act for the protection of plant varieties as a part of the TRIPS agreement in which India signed on 1994. And it allows patents or develop sui generis PBR, plant breeders' rights system, PBR system. So it allows protection or PBR, plant variety protection system in or plant breeders' rights system in India. So this protection for plant varieties and Farmers' Rights Act in 2001 in India, it is for providing for establishment of an effective system for the protection of plant varieties, the rights of the farmers and the plant breeders, and to encourage the development of new plant varieties. So this Act of 2001, that is a Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act of 2001 in India, it is aimed for the protection of plant varieties, existing plant varieties, and also for the protection of the rights of the plants, farmers and plant breeders, and to encourage further development in the development of new plant varieties. So whoever develops the new plant varieties is to be given some incentive in the form of some royalty. So that type of protection was given through the 2001 PP VFR Act. Then compulsory licenses granted after 3 years if the seeds are not available to the public. So if I develop a new variety, according to this act, if I develop a new variety, then I have to make it available to the public so that it can be made available to the farmers for cultivation. So even after the development of the variety and obtaining a rights, PBR rights, plant breeders' rights protection, and even after 3 years he is not marketing it or made it available for the farmers for cultivation, then compulsory licenses can be granted and the protection under PBR will not be available for the developer of that variety or plant breeder. So that's about the Plant Breeders' Rights Act of 2001. Another act is a Biological Diversity Act of 2002. It is for the prohibition on transfer of Indian genetic material outside the country without specific approval of the Indian government. So you cannot transfer a plant or genetic material, Indian genetic material outside the country without the specific approval of the Indian government. Because our biological diversity is protected by 2002 Biological Diversity Act. Then prohibition on anyone claiming an intellectual property or IPR such as patent or biodiversity or related knowledge without the permission of the Indian government. So it also, this act also prohibits anyone claiming a protection like IPR or a patent over the biodiversity which is available in India. So any existing biological diversity or that genetic material cannot be claimed by anyone else without the permission of the Indian government. So the regulation of collection and use of biological diversity by Indian nationals while exempting local communities from such restrictions. So this prevents Indian nationals from collecting and using biological materials from our nation or from India, but it exempts local committee, local communities or for using. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് നിങ്ങളുടെ അടുത്തുള്ള ഒരു പ്ലാന്റ് എടുത്ത് ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി പ്രശ്നങ്ങളൊന്നുമില്ല. ബട്ട് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാം പോയിട്ട് എന്ത് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല. യു കാൺ ട്രാവൽ throughout India and collect plant materials or biological genetic materials while traveling in India. എല്ലായിടത്തും പോയിട്ട് അങ്ങനെ എടുത്തുകൊണ്ട് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാം ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കില്ല. ബട്ട് for local communities, നിങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിതത്തിന്റെ ഭാഗമായിട്ടുള്ള the biological materials can be used. Whereas it prohibits Indian nationals to export biological materials outside our nation. Measures for sharing of benefits from the use of biodiversity, including transfer of technology, monetary returns, joint research and development, then joint IPR ownership, etc. So that provision is also there. For example, it is applicable when we compare the case of, for example, there are traditional knowledges or some plant varieties which is available, which is actually used for treatment in Ayurvedic medicines. ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള പല കാര്യങ്ങളുണ്ട്. Even for the Adivasi communities or the tribals, they may have their own medicines or herbal medicines which is used for treatment. And if somebody came up with, if somebody gets that knowledge from them, and if they try to give protection for that particular plant or medicine which is obtained from that plant, which is already an existing knowledge, it is not, it actually, this act, Biological Diversity Act, actually prevents such exploitation. But it also gives a provision. For example, there is a herbal medicine that is used by the tribals, and if they want to commercialize it, or if you want to commercialize it, you can collaborate with them with sharing of the monetary benefits out of that. So you can do research over that in collaboration with such tribal peoples from where you got that information. Then joint research or development, and even finally the sharing of that monetary benefits out of that research with that local communities from where you got that knowledge. So that type of joint research actually it is permitted under Biological Diversity Act. But you can't actually just take away some genetic material or biological material or biological diversity, any part of the biological diversity out of India using and use it for your own financial benefits. That is prevented under Biological Diversity Act. But it gives a provision for local usage or for your own use, for your own usage. You can collect that material, but also you have provision for collaborative and transfer technology for commercialization with sharing of benefits with the local resources or local communities from which you obtain that knowledge. So that provision is available in Biological Diversity Act. And this slide is about another one, that is measures to conserve and sustainably use the biological resources, including habitat and species protection, then environmental impact assessment of the projects, integration of biological diversity into plans, programs, and policies. So there are various provisions under that Biological Diversity Act. And also provisions for local communities to have a say in the use of the resources and knowledge and charge a fee. For example, the knowledge of the tribal communities, if they have their own medicine and they can say whether that medicine is to be commercialized or not. They have a say in the use and application of that particular knowledge that is existing in their community. And even they can have provisions for sharing of the knowledge and charging a fee for that. For example, they can have they can take a protection for that one, and if it is commercialized, a portion of that profit will be transferred to that particular community. That provision is there. And the protection of indigenous and traditional knowledge through appropriate laws or other measures such as a registration of such knowledge. So you can have protection for your traditional knowledge. These are the knowledge of the Adivasi communities or the tribals. Actually, it is a part of the traditional knowledge, which is passed through generations. So that traditional knowledge can be protected and through registration, so that nobody else can take from you. So the regulation of use of genetically modified organisms is also, because it's a Biological Diversity Act, there is a regulation on the or restriction on the use of a genetically modified organism, which because it is having significant biological ecological impact. So that means it can be there is a strict monitoring or regulation over the use of genetically modified organisms in India. Then setting up of national, state and local biodiversity funds to be used to support conservation and benefit sharing. So there is a different national and state or local body level biodiversity funds or such communities were actually developed. In Kerala also we have State Biodiversity Board, which actually monitors our biodiversity, and it regulates the research on that one. They also provides funding for further development or further research and development in the ecosystem, and also especially for Ayurvedic medicines and discovery of new products or bioprospecting from our herbal resources. All these things were actually funded by State Biodiversity Board, and they also monitors the use of the genetically modified foods and all these things. So biodiversity conservation, etc., are actually handled by State Biodiversity Board in Kerala. So we have national and state or even local body level biodiversity boards or biodiversity funds are there. Then setting up of biodiversity management committees, BMC, at local or village level, and state biodiversity board at the state level, and national biodiversity authority at national level. All these type of authorities were existing as a part of the Biological Diversity Act of 2002.